Welcome to the Time for a Reset podcast, the podcast where I, Paul Frampton, interview senior marketers on the big issues of the day and the thing that they want to see reset with an ever-changing landscape. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Time for a Reset. Great to have you back again. For our regular listeners, you'll know that this podcast kind of talks about the intersection of marketing, business and technology. And today we have a really interesting episode that focuses very much on the intersection of marketing and technology. So I'm delighted to introduce my two guests. We're joined by two folks that are now part of the family that I live in, the CvE and Goodway family. So Nick and Rob, who have both joined as Canton joined the CV business. Both have very long and illustrious, doesn't mean they're old, long and illustrious careers in media and have kind of spent time both on the kind of publisher and agency side. Rob spent a lot of time as a marketing technologist at the biggest media agency, MediaCom, then built out kind of publishing and ad tech businesses, including Crimtan. Nick has worked as a commercial leader in many of the biggest kind of publishers and media owners, including Yahoo and Future. And today, we're actually just going to have a chat about like what they wanted to hit reset on when they created and founded Canton, and also talk a little bit about why they ended up joining the CvE and Goodway family. So you may think that's a little bit self-serving, and probably it is a little bit, but really the motivation for this was quite a lot of people have asked us, whether it's journalists or peers or marketeers have asked, what does this mean? Like when companies come together, there's usually some story behind it, there's a motivation behind it, and there's a driver behind what a company's trying to do. So we thought it would be an interesting conversation to have and to talk through and share a light on some of that. So we're going to start in the same place that all of you as listeners kind of recognize, which is to talk about the thing that both Nick and Rob would most like to reset. So I'm going to start with you, Rob. Kind of firstly, welcome both of you.
Thank you.
So I'll start with you first, Rob. The question, I guess, is like, what would you most urgently like to hit reset on in the marketing industry?
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. I mean, for me, I think definitely it's the whole measurement piece, because measurement is fundamental to everything in marketing. Yeah, there's the old adage: if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And actually, there's an awful lot of problems in measurement these days. Many advertisers, too many, are over-reliant on cookie-based, ID-based messaging, and there are so many blind spots now. With iOS 14, it's not very reliable on Apple devices. It's one of the richest people, in the country, and where a lot of our customers, live, and things like sort of CTV and other non-addressable media. So I really feel like we need to really reboot how we look at measurement, and I think really kind of help CMOs. Like if CMOs have better measurement and better data, I think they'll be better able to sort of take strategic control of driving growth. If you don't trust the numbers, it's very hard to move forward, right?
Absolutely, no, I agree, Rob. I mean, it's kind of fundamental. I remember you and I, when we were talking pre the acquisition, we talked about the fact that we've been talking about attribution forever. And I remember the early days of Media Context where we had Artemis and we were trying to solve that. We went and we were going and training Google on it in 2007, and I don't think anyone's really cracked attribution perfectly yet, or at least not enough attention, to your point, is put into solving it.
Yeah, I think there are emerging solutions. There's no perfect way of doing it, but there are better ways of doing it. And I think we'll say don't be over reliant on the simple cookie-based messaging. Have a look at a whole range of things. I think experiments and testing are vital now, and really kind of understanding I don't think enough importance to put into it. Yeah, I think there's almost this feeling that you can get a report from Google or from Facebook and that's your marketing attribution done. And it's much more involved than that. And I think that we really kind of need to sort of spread the education as well, so that even when like CFOs or CEOs, if they're looking at marketing numbers, they kind of understand the nuance and what that might mean.
Yeah, great points. So Nick, same question to you.
Yeah, I think for me probably, and it's really why we started Canton in the first place. The major opportunity is sort of that reset of a relationship between brand and their partner. A phrase that I've been trying to get going is sort of the partner of record. I think it's something that brands really need. Absolutely have an agency. I will never ever say don't have an agency,
Right.
But I think you need that partner of record who can help you with all the complex world of technology, what touched on measurement and data, all those elements. These areas are moving so fast at the moment. It feels like every 6 months there's a change. Sometimes it might be Google saying the change that we were going to make, we're not going to make for another 6 months, but it's still a change. And I don't feel that too many brands have that support of the business that can help them understand what this all means, what they should do. Right. And that's really, for me, the biggest sort of reset that we need to be focusing on at the moment. And as I say, it's why we started Canton, why we wanted to come into the Goodway and CvE family, because that's, for me, the opportunity we have to develop it. And, we're not alone. That there are competitors that we have. And actually, I look to the whole industry is really developing compared to 4 or 5 years ago, where really there wasn't anybody trying to support brands in this way. So it's really important to me that we all work together and grow the opportunity and help brands become better, really.
No, I think it's a great point in that the world has changed so dramatically around us in the last 10 years and really in the last couple of years post-COVID that yet the service models in a lot of places have stayed the same as they were 2-3 decades ago. So you make a point that there can be pathfinders or there can be companies that are really at the cutting edge of that, but it does need a whole industry, kind of almost like it needs a village kind of concept to actually change.
Yeah, and I think we constantly talk about sort of the talent gap that exists, and it's something that we've worked really hard to sort of grow people to be able to understand this world. We have some wonderful traders in the business and wonderful traders that exist outside of our world. But I think it's really important that we give people the education and take them on this journey, because at times it feels like there's maybe less than 50, 60 people in the whole industry who are able to talk to some of these challenges. So we're really trying to make sure that we grow those skills internally and work with some of the best talent that's around.
Yeah, if I can sort of build on that, really, I think that marketing is becoming so much more complicated, so much more technical and data-led. And because of legislation, it's almost it's so important that brands sort of take responsibility for that now. In the old days, you could just let your agency look after the ad tech. And I think it's that world. I think that when we founded Canton, I think a lot of advertisers didn't really know where to turn. They weren't getting the support they needed from their agencies. Yes, vendors were there to support them, but vendors are really good at telling you what they're good at. They're not so good at telling you what the flaws are, or maybe supporting it at times. So I think how advertisers I think do need help, and there is that skills gap, and by sort of taking that forward, I think we can progress marketing.
Yeah, no, great points, guys. And I think this thought that marketers need like an independent kind of thought partner that's in the detail. And that, Rob, I know you've coined a phrase which you'll probably share in a second, but around what brands actually need in order to have thinking partners. I think the problem in our industry is everyone probably slightly for their own gain, whether you're on the big giant platform side or big holding group side or even a big consultancy, has ended up leaning towards certain preferences in terms of technology or service model that aren't always right for the client, the end client. And I know that was a passion that we all shared, that we wanted to keep fiercely kind of independent and focused on what the client's needs were. So maybe, I know that was a big part of the DNA of Canton. So maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, exactly, yeah. I think it's actually what drew us to CvE as well, that we kind of really shared that belief that we are sort of trusted, independent practitioners. I think we both share that. And I think we both really share the view that in a changing world, there is a better way and an emerging new model. I think that's the really exciting side of what we did before, and now what we're doing together is trying to sort of grow this new way of supporting marketeers.
Something that we've developed over the last few years, and obviously we bring it under the one umbrella. We have three words that we talk about: experienced independent practitioners. And I think that really sums up what the business is about. Actually, one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that there's been a big consultancy world out there and the Accentures of this world, but we really wanted to make sure that we had a team of people that worked purely in marketing for a lot of years. We've got guys, quite a few guys who've got 20 years experience throughout the business and the marketing world. Independent was always a key part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be shaped too much by big tech. We always have worked with independent ad tech, and that really sort of informs our philosophy. And practitioners kind of goes back to that piece that everybody that we bring into this company has to have their 10,000 hours, that whether that's in front of Google Ads, in search, whether that's in Facebook, whether that's planning, whether that's measurement or ad tech, is kind of across the whole range. But everybody that really touches next to a client has done their 10,000 hours. And that was always really, really important. They hadn't just read the manual, because generally the manual is written by Google and Facebook. And actually building on a point Rob made earlier, is that when we have pitched a brand, so often they say the last people to train our team was a big tech organization. Now, fantastic work that they do, but it comes with a lens. And that's really where we want to sort of break out and give people that opportunity to understand, well, what does that whole marketing mix look like?
Right, and it's not. And I think the important thing, and we've all talked about this, the important thing is it doesn't mean that those platforms are wrong. It's just understanding the strengths and weaknesses across the ecosystem, so that you don't go in blindsided and think that you've got a perfect solution, because there's always going to be some compromises in using a full technology stack or a particular measurement solution, which I know you talk a lot about, Rob.
You want to bring in different worlds, right? If you kind of get stuck in one silo, then you're really competing with everybody else. And we've developed something called the growth sophistication model, which is really our kind of framework for how advertisers and marketers can look to progress. So it starts with things like strategy, goes through operating model, that's in-housing or right-housing. You look through data, tech, measurement, and then finally there's the media piece. And I think if you can get all of those components in place and do it across all possible media, rather than just the silo of Google or Facebook or whatever it might be, then that's really what leads to better communication with customers, and ultimately should lead to companies being ready to grow.
Right, nice. And for those listening, Rob, how would you, if you were fast forwarding to what a close to perfect model would look like for marketing today in a world that is very technology-led, very data-led, like how would you paint that picture of what that kind of might look like? Because a reset, I guess, is intended to kind of stop, change direction and move towards a point. I'm kind of interested in, like, what do you think that end state might look like?
It's always a journey, and you'll probably never quite get to the end state. But I think one of the really important things is that you lean into the problem. So things like measurement or identity, which is my other real big, the identity ID world, which is my other kind of really big focus. I think a lot of people are quite scared by it. It can be quite intimidating, and you can almost worry that are there any medals to be won for dipping your toe in this water? And I think it's a real shame, because I really think there are. I think for people, be it at an individual level or at a company level, those that really engage can actually drive forward more success. And ultimately, by engaging, you will build a better setup. And so I think that leaning in is really important. I also think being agile is really important. Being flexible. The world's moving so quickly that the best decisions you can make now, things may change very, very quickly. You may need to sort of adjust. And it's by leaning in and by being and trying to have that sort of flexible mindset and flexible sort of structures that you can kind of really build and success. And lastly, I would say, everyone's going to try and learn. There's this huge thing about talent and talent shortage out there. If we all try and learn and develop and push forward, then that's where the talent's going to come from, and that's where I think success is going to come from.
Great points. We're definitely going to come back to that talent point, but I wanted to just dig in a little bit on some of what you said and get your perspective, Nick. So obviously your traditional CMO, and I've talked to a lot of them on this podcast, there is a small community that's probably very comfortable with technology. The vast majority are still, and quite admittedly, getting their heads around how they build that technology expertise alongside kind of building a brand, kind of setting a brand purpose, thinking about kind of a growth strategy and customer experience. So in your experience, like, what is it about the kind of marketers that lean into technology that actually is good, that what can other people listening kind of take note of, I suppose?
I think it's always the challenge is striking that balance. You don't necessarily want the CMO to know the inner workings of a CDP. It's much bigger issues, but I think it's being able to understand at a high level, what are these platforms being able to deliver and what are the benefits of having them truly integrated? I think Bob touched on this earlier, is that that building of a marketing technology function within a brand is something that's really developing. And not everybody needs to fully build that out. They can use partners like us. But equally, having those core skills, somebody who's a specialist in understanding what these platforms bring, how they integrate into the existing stack, and what are those challenges coming down the pipe, I think are probably the big things, because quite often there are big costs associated to installing something. It may completely change. We talked about measurement earlier. I think one of the biggest challenges that many CMOs face is that if they change their whole measurement framework, they change how they're measuring customers, it can make all their old data irrelevant. Maybe an exaggeration, but it certainly goes, well, how do you measure year on year when you've changed everything in overnight? And there's ways to deal with those issues, but they are big movements. And we talk so often about the fact that the CFO needs to come on that journey, and that you need to educate that whole boardroom as to what marketing is trying to do. And it's a major piece for us. So having an understanding of the technology and the impact is important, but then being able to delegate to people, Rob 10 years ago, who have that experience of building everything from the ground up and actually making it function is probably where they then need to pass it on. Either
to have some marketing technologist people in your business and kind of get them to do the more detailed work, but just make sure that technology is part of your thinking. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's something that 8 years ago, 10 years ago, hard to put an exact number on it, you wouldn't have even thought about it. The traditional agency model was that literally Rob would have run that for some of the biggest brands in the country. They were very comfortable saying, please look after this for me and please build it from the ground up and use your infrastructure. But as that sort of things like GDPR just made brands have to own their data in a way that wasn't important. It was more a decision as to whether they wanted to or not. Now it's a legal requirement, and that's such a huge shift for people to go on. Rob, did you want to?
I just want to sort of build on that a little bit. I think we can talk about technology a lot. It can be quite abstract. We've always got to remember what's the purpose of it. The CMO may not care what the tech is. The CMO cares about how well you can reach your audience. I think that companies that sort of really lean in and invest in this space will ultimately be able to protect their audience and monitor and look after their audience in a better way, which, as we know, that's so valuable, and that's what's going to drive growth. So, I think really making sure that we really understand what the end goals, the use cases, if you like, what the purpose of doing things is. And then if you focus on that, everything else kind of slots together. Unfortunately, you often see companies getting sold in with the technology without often knowing how or why they're going to use it. Really, you're going to really work out what it is you're trying to achieve first, and then how do we do that, and then do that.
Great point. And it kind of leads me on to the next part of the conversation, what you guys have just talked about, in that I think we obsess a lot about that intersection between marketing and technology and how it actually helps to the point you made earlier, Rob, how it helps a business grow, like know their customers, have the data points, be able to turn that into kind of revenue or kind of profitability. That's what this is all about. And I think sometimes the agency community can get a little bit too obsessed with kind of downstream metrics and kind of, I'm not saying awareness and traffic on site aren't important, but they're lead measures towards much bigger kind of more business centric goals, which is where the bigger consultancies play. And I think, again, the space that that when we talked, we kind of coalesced around a similar space was we believe there was a gap between big agencies, digital agencies, and how they approach the world, which predominantly is a paid media kind of commission-focused model still today. And the big consultancies are superb at C-level stakeholder engagement, but they tend to leave you a deck and then you don't really know how to do it. So we felt there was that space in the middle, was how I felt about CvE. And then I met you guys, and you guys felt a very similar thing. And in the last week, I know we've all seen this new report from consultancy that kind of talked to a bunch of marketeers about what they saw as important for the next 2 years. And there were people in there interviewed that we've chatted to on this podcast, like Pete Markey, CMO of Boots, Cheryl Cavalier, CEO of Eve Sleep. And I'll just call out a few of the things, and then I'd love to come back to it. I think we touched on them, but the key kind of things that got the highest score were moving to a more data and insight-driven decision-making model, improving customer journey management and customer experience, maximizing marketing effectiveness, which is where we started, actually, then brand building and enhancing brand loyalty, and that hasn't gone away. And then you've also got proving the ROI of marketing, moving to more agile, kind of agile ways of working internally and with partners, which you talked about earlier on, Rob. So we touched on some of it already, but I just wondered how, when you hear that from marketeers, like what else do you think they need support on? Like, where do you think we need to go in terms of supporting brands on those type of things in the next couple of years?
Yeah, all of those things are very, very complicated. And I think, as I say, it can be quite overwhelming to think, right, all of these different things that you want to achieve in a changing world. So you've got moving goalposts. So that can be quite overwhelming. And I think what you really want to help brands do is and advertisers do is navigate that space, but also develop their own internal culture and process so that they can navigate it themselves. Our model is very much we try and give knowledge freely, and we try and really kind of, it's almost that sort of what's the phrase? Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man a fish, he can eat forever, right? We want to help sort of teach marketers and advertisers to think differently and be able to navigate this space as it gets more complex, but equally how we can use technology to deliver better marketing.
Right, and take more, to your point, take more ownership and kind of control back, because you raised the point, Rob, that 10 years ago, and a lot of brands are still in this space, they're almost like rented expertise, rented platforms, gave the kind of almost the principal relationship control to agencies. And then GDPR came along, kind of digital and e-commerce became such a bigger part of kind of brands' businesses that they're in this space where I was like, okay, maybe we do need to take a bit more control. So this kind of takes us into that in-housing, right housing space, which I think is always fascinating because people tend to have some slight biases depending on where they come from. So maybe I'll start with you, Nick. Like, what's your view on what you see happening around kind of clients taking more control, building capability in-house? Is it reducing, which you hear from a lot of big agency bosses around the world, or is it happening just as much but happening in a different way to maybe it was a few years ago?
Yeah, I think people still have a little bit of a view that you're either an in-house business or you outsource your marketing, as in very binary in terms of what we do. And we talked about that great sophistication model that we looked at, where you break down each area. And I think for me, nearly all of them can be a range. Probably the only one that's sort of in or out is technology. For us, what we're seeing is nearly all brands are going, we want to own our technology contracts. We want to be able to understand how they be able to look under the hood, see what's happening, but just have that control. So from a technology and ultimately data piece, I think that is something that all but a few brands are going, no, we need to bring that in-house and completely own it.
Yeah.
But then you look at the other areas, we talked about operating model in terms of, some people have literally a search, social, display team, SEO, all of that piece sits under one roof and it's completely in-house. Others, they push that to a third-party agency who do all that work and have got experience and range of skills and get all the different platform owners in. And for me, there is no right or wrong answer. It's about your attitude to risk as a business. It's also how you want to set yourselves up. And we see some will just have search in-house, for example. So it's all different. And I think that is definitely, if you'd read the press 5 years ago, you'd have thought that everybody was just going to have a pure in-house team and agency.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think we ever thought that was going to happen. Some people...
No, there are many different flavours of it, aren't there? Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that real range within that. And similarly creative. Some people have built, there's huge creative arms that purely for online and but for the whole business that some brands have built in-house and others completely outsource it. And again, for me, there is no right or wrong answer. It depends how you want. Probably the right answer, if you're, say, an e-commerce business that wants to launch a sale this afternoon, it's probably best to have an in-house team, and there's probably better ways to do that. Equally, still a lot of the big auto companies, they've got much longer lead times. There's no need to have that. I need something for 2 days later. So absolutely outsource that. And again, the range exists, and we will never say pick one or the other. It's work what's right for you as a business at the time, and location is clearly a thing. I feel that the talent question is something that is going to run through, for many years to come. Clearly, if you have a business based in London, it is much easier to recruit that talent, and you've got that. We've worked with businesses, sort of outside. It may shock a few marketers that our businesses outside the M25, but there's a whole range of things, and it is hard to. How do you get a 10-year social trader in sort of part of the country? Your talent pool is much smaller, and so that may inform your decision. After a slightly long answer, we divide it up into those areas we talked about earlier. For me, technology should be in-house, and that ownership should be there. And everything else, from the operating model, creative, and the media side.
Depends on the business strategy. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And you can change. You may want to do something for a few years and go, did it work? Did it not? And you bring an agency back in.
And I think that's a great point. And like a manifestation of that for me is like this whole new retail media space where retailers wanted to move quickly and fast, and they've always, whether it was putting an ad in the press or having creative agencies that can turn around things, that there was always a kind of agency set up to move at pace. But now, when you're actually going to become a publisher and run your own paid media and run stuff for partners using data, suddenly you're like, wait a minute, actually, maybe we do need to start thinking about building this ourselves. Rob, I'll let you come in here.
Just wanted to sort of say it's about having that spine, isn't it? I mean, to Nick's point, if you have your data and your tech and possibly your measurement in-house, then you have that spine, and everything else gets easier. Because a lot of the media that you run will have come from the data anyway, so a lot of the instruction is kind of inbuilt. And I think that also leads to the talent point, right? If you have your data and technology in-house, you're really increasing that talent pool that's so vital in this modern world.
Yeah, so let's dig into the talent crunch conversation, because we've kind of butted up against it a few times. So, I mean, the macro version of it is we've got this new economy, very digital led, and we've got a paucity of skills everywhere when it comes to kind of data, when it comes to analyst or analytics, agile, kind of the kind of sciences, I suppose, and that applies very much to marketing as well. And like, if we zoom out and look at it as a global perspective, I know we're doing a lot more work in the US, right? And the salary inflation and the kind of supply and demand dynamics there are probably even more out of control than they are in the UK. So how do you guys think about solving for that? Like, you can't always, there's not enough of a talent pool to always hire in market. So what do you do?
Well, one of the things we try and do is we try and bring in engineers into marketing. People who aren't traditionally from that marketing background, and try and bring them through. And crucially, someone who's a strong engineer needs to be taught about how that marketing world works. I think that's one of the battles that you have at the board level between sort of CMOs and CTOs. Is that often I feel like CTOs don't feel like they get the right specs that they need from the marketing team.
Yeah.
But then in reverse, I don't know if the technology team often know enough about the end use cases or what they're trying to achieve. So if you can kind of bring those kind of worlds together and bring people in from outside of that world and train them up, then I think that's one solution. I think, as I said, having that culture of learning and being free with knowledge is very important. But also, particularly as we're going through a period of a bit of a downturn now, automation is vital, and it's already a huge function now for us and our clients. What we're trying to do, that's only going to grow. And as AI kind of becomes more and more intrinsic to marketing, I think that's the way that you support well-trained, great people with automation and tools.
I think it's so interesting how I look sort of to the beginning of our careers, and we all started with a big grad cohort. My first role was at the Guardian, and you look at the fact that we were able to be trained, and businesses gave us time to breathe. And I know it's an expensive world, and we've seen we've installed a number of grad programs within previously Canton and now CvE. We've had some great people that have come through, and we've had some people that leave the business. And you are conscious that you've invested money into people and it's flown out the door, either because they realise that marketing isn't for them or because they go to other places. And it is frustrating, but I think for me, the industry as a whole does need to invest in the next wave of talent. I look at the fact that I spent, I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks just being trained before I got clients.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah.
Anybody. And I do think that we as an industry...
We throw people in the deep end very quickly in the new world.
And we go, right, make me money. I think we've got to give those people time to grow and learn. And I think we have to put the effort in at the beginning, because then everybody gets shocked when there's there's a gap. I think almost one of the hardest things to recruit at the moment seems to be that 3 to 5 year experience. There really is a shortage, and we've got to put those people in at the early days, either a grad program, but also something that Rob and I really believe in is that you don't have to have gone to university to enter this
absolutely
industry.
Yeah,
and I think we have to get over that sort of slightly, did you get a 2-1 from a quote unquote good university?
Yeah.
And therefore you can come and work in media. It's like we have such a range of talent within the business. And for me, it's something that we just need to keep investing in, making sure that we hire from a diverse group of people.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Nick, because not that long ago I was talking to Richie from the School of Marketing on here, who's built a whole apprenticeship program to encourage that behaviour. And I think our industry, because it has a bias towards kind of public school and a bias towards kind of university, tends to kind of go, well, that's what we must hire. And you make a great point in that sometimes actually it's the folks that don't go into more further education that get deeper into playing with technology or gaming or kind of playing with coding or whatever, and that they're more native to it actually than folks that go to university never learn soft skills. So I think it's a really good point.
Yeah, and you see the skills that they have are the ones that they didn't actually learn at university. We recently recruited an engineer, and what was so exciting about him is he built APIs so that he could save his favorite song and translate it straight into a Spotify playlist. Yeah, that was just his personal enjoyment of the world, and he built some code and made his life better. And
he makes stuff happen, right? Yeah.
He had actually been to really good university and was learning some great skills. It's not to put that side down, but you saw that sort of side world of his was ultimately what we wanted, and makes him a great data. As Rob touched on, those data engineers that we've built out to be that connective tissue between marketing and technology. They are. You just want them from a wide range of...
that's a really good example. So, Rob, you mentioned recession. It's a bit difficult to not touch on recession. And I think it feels like there's a bit of a negative narrative that comes out of the ad industry, and it's like spend's going to go down as we do. But I feel like we have a slightly different view of the world. So I'd love to get both of your takes on marketers listening, or even people in the service industry or media and side of the business. Like, how would you encourage them to think about the recession as an opportunity?
Yeah, and look, obviously, it looks like there could be some tough times for some people and some companies, so we need to be very cognizant of that. But it's also a time to refresh, and I think that it's actually only going to drive change faster. Yeah, I think that you can afford to be quite You can have some wastage with your media when times are good, right? But actually, when you need to be more efficient, that's really when you've got to look at the automation. You've got to look at cutting down wastage, and that also ties into measurements. If you can measure what's good and what doesn't work, then you can be more efficient. And if you can cut down on wastage, that's great for sort of sustainability, and everything kind of improves. So I think we need to kind of really embrace the challenge. The world is as it is right now. But I think if we can kind of really embrace that challenge, try and move forward, that's both at an individual and a company level. That's how we kind of progress and come out of it, right?
I think you really saw in sort of the last couple of years with COVID, there were some brands that went, let's just pull everything in, stop expenditure, really focus just how much money can we save. And we saw, there's an argument to say that COVID was a time that really pushed our business forward, because quite a few brands came to us and said, this is really hard, but we want to use this opportunity as a time to, as Rob said, time to change. We started working with PokerStars, who turned around, or the Stars Group. He turned around and said, well, we now want to make some real change within our business and come out the other side in a really, really strong position. And Tom, Tom Warren, who runs that business, really used it as a huge opportunity within the business. And I think it would have been very easy just to batten down the hatches. Lots of people played poker, so they sort of moved forward, but could have just done nothing. But actually, we did a whole program of auditing their business, giving them a program of change. And whilst I'm obviously slightly biased, they've come out of it such a stronger business, really great structure, awesome tech, some brilliant people in that business, and they've really moved themselves forward. And I think you're going to see it again. There'll be brands that say, right, we have to do something different, because if we just stop, we'll fail. And we'll get their technology together. We'll think about how their business should be run. Sometimes you can do these things with a cost saving, sometimes it's a capex increase, but the long-term benefit will be absolutely huge for brands that really embrace that change. And I always get nervous when you sort of start describing really tough times as opportunity, because I know it's going to be tough for many people on an individual level, but I think looking at it as a company point of view, it's a huge moment where they can make some investments that will pay over 23, 24, huge return, and give people some great opportunities within their business. No,
I think you make some great points, and of course you have to be, as Rob and you both say, cognizant, especially around the language of it. But it does kind of prove it does separate the wheat from the chaff to some extent, because it forces you to really kind of get together. And I've had so many conversations with marketers on here who said suddenly we started working in a different way, in a more agile way, because we didn't have the time to have 6 meetings. We had to have one meeting, which was 30 minutes, and make quicker decisions. And we talk about reset. Actually, funnily enough, that e-consultancy report was termed the Great Reset. So it feels like there's so many macro things happening. I mean, obviously, cost of living and inflation and the economic pressure is a big part of it, plus the political instability and the privacy and everything. But then just the way that consumers are kind of consuming things, the shift possibly to Web3 is also interesting, even if very nascent. So the last kind of question I wanted to ask you both, because we could probably talk all day, but people probably don't want to listen all day. Like what is it that you are personally spending attention to try and learn? Like, we talk quite a lot about curious expertise, like you want people to be curious and to build up expertise. And you both said it, that what you're an expert in kind of last month or last year isn't necessarily good enough. I'd be interested in kind of knowing like what you're reading up on most yourselves as individuals, because I think sometimes when people listen, they go, well, these people have got their stuff together. They're really smart. They've got loads of years experience. Of course they get it, but everyone's always trying to improve themselves. So Rob, I'll come to you first.
So I think starting point is really kind of learn the world of TV and learn some of the acronyms that go on in that world, because of the convergence of that media. And if we're going to how we're going to do holistic measurement, we need to understand the media that's behind it. So I think in the past there was always this thing that people thought, right, I'm a display person, I'm a TV person, I'm a search person. Whereas we, as individuals, I think as a company, really try to encourage everyone to kind of learn a bit of everything, because that's what gives you that all-round skill. And then really kind of pushing into the world of privacy and identity, which means you've got to start to learn a little bit about law and legislation.
Right.
So the more kind of reading and learning you can do about that space as well. These are the things that are sort of powering things forward for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, connected TV is kind of sort of the thing that really seems to be, brands are so focused on how they migrate some of these budgets and really think about those opportunities. That's been something that we've been sort of working to Jordan Kernahan, who runs our trading team. That's been a sort of big focus between us. But I think the other thing for me is that we probably had quite an EMEA focus over the last sort of few months or few years. Done quite a bit of work outside, but really understanding what are those, from the privacy point of view, how things are different in, I learned a lot about, say Brazil. The law there is very, very different. And we're seeing in the US how obviously CCPA came out of California, how the different states are approaching these privacy era. And I think so for me, sort of trying to make sure that I have a global view is kind of a real piece, and it's hard work because you're trying to find out all these different countries and how they're approaching things different, and there's obviously different cultures that are playing different experiences. But that's been a sort of huge thing for me, and not just going, I live in the UK, GDPR has been a big important piece. I know everything about privacy. So that's sort of really my focus.
Yeah, actually, I think we'd all actually forgotten one. It was right in front of our noses. We were talking about it all yesterday together, and that's retail media. I think one of the great things about joining up with CvE and with the wider Goodway team is we get the chance to work much more in the US market. They've already got a lot of experience in that retail media world. Retail media in the US is so much more advanced than it is here, so much bigger than it is
2-3 years ahead,
And to talk to the really talented people out there who've already been doing this for a number of years and are ahead, and then trying to add our own spin for our own market with legislation and things, and then applying those skills here is fascinating. I mean, look, you've always got to keep learning, because if you keep learning, then I think everything works out.
Well, I think that's a really nice place to leave it, guys. Like focusing on that, everybody's constantly on a journey. I think there's one, as you said, and constantly learning and kind of being curious. We've covered a lot of ground. Where we covered ground all the way from, I guess, the macro factors that are driving a need for reset and transformation. This need for marketing technology to come closer, and therefore a need for a CMO and people serving a CMO to be more curious and being more adaptable to different ways of doing things, and kind of thinking about the technology and the data as enablers anchored to kind of business strategy, as opposed to the thing to get obsessed of. I think sometimes people get a little bit obsessed about the new shiny thing. It's like, oh, it's that, let's do it. But why? Is it the right decision for your business? Can you win there? You can't do everything and win everywhere. And I think that's where actually a lot of kind of marketers or kind of agencies get it wrong. So look, I mean, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and we talk to each other all day. I've definitely learned new stuff, and I hope it's been really useful for the audience. So all that remains is to thank you both for your time.
Right. Thanks, Paul. Really
Thanks,
good.
Paul.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Time for a Reset. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. We'll be back talking to a senior marketeer very soon. Make sure you don't miss out on any new episodes by subscribing on Apple, Spotify or SoundCloud, and leave us a review at timeforareset.co.uk.